Welcome to the deep dive. Today we are opening the book on a period of Ethiopian history.
Well, it was so volatile.
Incredibly volatile.
It resulted in a decade of devastating civil war, fought over fundamental questions of identity, things like, liturgy, calendar dates.
Even infant circumcision,
No.
incredibly specific thing.
Exactly. We're diving into the 25-year reign of Emperor Susenyos I. He held the Solomonic throne from 1607 to 1632.
And his story, it's not just about military power, though there was plenty of that.
No, it's about a man who made it a truly radical decision. He tried to convert to Roman Catholicism.
And then impose it as the state religion between 1622 and 1632.
A decision that, as you said, set the Ethiopian empire ablaze.
It really did. And this deep dive is crucial because the source material, it doesn't just list battles, it forces us to look at the why.
Right, the motivation behind such a huge pivot.
Why risk everything? We'll cover the specific, deeply controversial religious and cultural reforms he imposed.
The consequences. The immediate, definitive reversal delivered by his own son. It's this powerful, almost tragic collision, Political pragmatism versus deep cultural roots.
And to really get Susenyos' ambition, we have to start with his backstory, which is pretty surprising.
Yeah, it really is.
I mean, despite being a member of the Solomonic dynasty, this ancient ruling house,
Centuries of history,
he
isn't it?
spent his early life totally on the outside. He was in exile and eventually became a shifta.
Which is the local term for an outlaw, basically? A guerrilla fighter?
Yeah. Can you imagine? The future emperor of Ethiopia living on the margins.
Fighting dirty wars, getting captured, and then living among the Oromo people for 2 whole years, learning their ways, their language.
That experience wasn't just some footnote in his biography.
No way. It made him tough, shrewd, and maybe crucially open to radical solutions later on.
He used that knowledge, those alliances he formed, to beat his rivals like Jacob and grab the throne in 1607.
So that background, that constant fight for survival, it feeds right into why he might look for external help later. Okay, let's unpack this then. A ruler's ambition and the desperate need for alliance.
Yeah, because before Susenyos even thought about Jesuits or Catholicism, his life was just defined by the struggle for stability.
Just holding things together.
Pretty much. He spent the first, 15 years just trying to consolidate power. He faced 3 big threats constantly.
Okay, what were they?
First, the ongoing Oromo conflicts. Constant raiding, major battles needed just to keep the border stable.
The huge drain, I imagine.
Massive. Second, external expansion pressures. He was clashing with the Sennar Sultanate on the western frontier.
Trying to secure trade routes.
Exactly. Annexing places like the Kingdom of Fizuli, even sacking at Bara. And third, internal threats. Persistent revolts from powerful provincial nobles who never really accepted his legitimacy.
So he was constantly spending blood and treasure just trying to keep the empire from flying apart.
Which leads us right to that core question you raised. Why risk everything? Why change the state religion, the very cornerstone of the culture and the dynasty for centuries?
The answer seems fiercely, maybe desperately pragmatic.
Okay.
Military hardware and technology. That was the main driver. The hope, the calculation, was securing modern weaponry and military aid from Portugal and Spain.
Which were united under one crown at that time, right?
Correct. And this wasn't just a pipe dream. There was history here. Decades earlier, a small Portuguese force had been absolutely critical in saving the Ethiopian empire from invasion by Ahmed Gran.
Ah, so there was a precedent.
A powerful one. Susenyos likely saw an alliance with European Catholic powers as maybe the only reliable way to finally solidify his rule against all these threats, internal and external. Okay, so that's the why. Now here's where it gets really interesting, the Jesuit connection. Specifically, this figure, Pedro Paez. Yes, Paez is key. He arrived in 1603, and he represents the, let's say, successful soft power phase of this whole thing.
What made him different?
Well, what's fascinating is Paez's sheer tact. His understanding of the political situation on the ground. He used a very shrewd top-down approach.
Focus on the ruler first.
Exactly. Convert the emperor and hope the rest follows. And unlike the Jesuits who came later, Paez was pragmatic. He actually learned the local languages.
Amharic and Ge.
Fluently, which
Yeah.
is huge. And he gained Susenyos' personal friendship and trust. He wasn't just a missionary. He became an invited confidant at the imperial court.
And he brought tangible value too, right? It wasn't just talk.
Absolute critical point. Paez wasn't just preaching theology. He was demonstrating European skill. He designed and supervised building projects for the emperor churches, palaces.
Like the famous ones at Gorgora.
Precisely. In this sophisticated European style. that showcased architectural engineering knowledge that would have been massively impressive to Susenyos and the court. It showed concrete benefits.
So it was a relationship built on trust, shared interest.
And genuine intellectual engagement, too. Susenyos really got into the theological debates with Pius. He was apparently persuaded by Pius' arguments, especially about the dual nature of Christ.
And he saw Catholicism. How?
Well, interestingly, not as some totally new faith, but more like a restoration, a return to what he, perhaps under Pius's influence, believed was the original pure form of Christianity before theological divergences.
And Susenyos backed this up politically, showed his commitment in tangible ways.
He did. There's this detail where he changed long-standing imperial customs, like he stopped hiding behind a curtain from commoners.
Which the Jesuits saw as a positive sign, right, of
Right.
openness.
Yeah, they appreciated that. Plus, you have to remember, Susenyos already had a pretty strained political relationship with the traditional Ethiopian Orthodox Church hierarchy.
Specifically the Abuna, the head of the church.
Exactly, the highest local religious authority. So, aligning with Rome wasn't just about faith or military aid. It was also a clever political move to bypass and maybe undermine that powerful local church structure.
So this careful groundwork was laid based on friendship, mutual benefit, military need.
But it was undone remarkably quickly once the main player, Pius, was off the scene.
Yes, that careful foundation crumbles, which brings us right into the tipping point. The controversial decades, 1622 to 1632.
Right. The architect of that initial success, Pius, he died around 1622, right about the time Susenyos made his public conversion to Catholicism.
And the new guy arrives, the new figure takes over, Jesuit patriarch Afonso Mendes, and this is where diplomacy just stops, like a switch flip.
It really seems like it. What's fascinating and ultimately disastrous is this sudden jarring shift from Pius's negotiation and gradualism to Mendes's rigid imposition.
And Mendes's goal was?
Nothing short of full Latinization of the Ethiopian church. Complete conformity with Rome, leaving zero room for cherished local customs or traditions.
And this is the spark that ignites the Civil War.
Absolutely. Because the reforms that Susenyos, now guided by Mendes, started imposing were incredibly unpopular. They weren't just about abstract belief. They directly attacked the fabric of everyday Ethiopian life, culture, identity.
Wait, so you're saying the empire plunged into years of brutal civil war, costing thousands of lives, largely because they were arguing over things like when to fast or infant circumcision?
It sounds almost unbelievable from our perspective, but yes, that level of detail shows just how deeply intertwined faith, tradition, and daily life were. These weren't minor issues to them.
Okay, give us some specifics. What were these deeply unpopular reforms?
Well, they changed the entire Ethiopian Christian calendar, all the fasts, the feasts, to align with the Roman one. This completely disrupted the rhythm of spiritual life for everyone.
Okay, that's big.
Then they banned the traditional Ethiopian practice of observing both Saturday, the Sabbath, and Sunday as holy days. Mendes insisted only Sunday worship was permitted.
And the circumcision issue?
They strictly forbade the widespread custom of circumcising male infants on the 8th day. The Jesuits viewed this ancient practice as, quote, Jewish, not Christian, and wanted it stamped out.
Wow. Okay, what else? Doctrine. Ritual.
On doctrine, they suppressed the traditional Ethiopian liturgy, which used the ancient Ge'ez language. They tried to impose the Latin rite instead.
Which nobody understood.
Pretty much.
Okay.
And crucially, they demanded everyone renounce the foundational Miaphysite theology. This was the traditional understanding of Christ's singular, unified nature, a core belief of the Ethiopian church for over 1,000 years.
So attacking the very theological heart of the church.
Exactly. And they even tried to impose mandatory celibacy on all clergy, whereas in the Orthodox tradition that was really only required for monks, not parish priests.
And the final insult, perhaps the ultimate one, forcing lifelong adherents of the Ethiopian Orthodox faith to be rebaptized as Catholics, essentially telling them their previous faith, their parents' faith, was invalid. And Susenyos went along with all this. Why?
He must have believed the payoff that modern Portuguese military aid he craved was worth the immense cultural cost. He tragically miscalculated.
Hugely miscalculated.
Precisely. These weren't seen as simple religious updates. People saw them, rightly or wrongly, as cultural imperialism enforced by their own emperor. And that rigidity, that lack of compromise,
led to unmanageable, massive civil unrest.
Destroyed the very stability Susenyos had sought through the alliance in the first place. The cure was far worse than the disease. Which brings us to the endgame. Section 3, Abdication and the Great Reversal. The Civil War just wore the emperor down completely.
The source material is quite stark here. It says Susenyos finally issued an Edict of Toleration on June 14th, 1632.
Officially restoring Ethiopian Orthodox Christianity.
And immediately after, he abdicated in favor of his son Fasilides.
The sheer exhaustion comes through. The sources note Susenyos died just a few months later, literally worn out by war.
That phrase, it tells you everything. This wasn't just a political defeat, it was a personal devastation for him.
Absolutely. And his son, Fasilides, he saw the damage. He recognized the, frankly, existential threat the whole Catholic project posed to his own rule and to the empire's identity.
And he acted fast.
With astonishing speed and severity. He moved to completely reverse the Catholic decade and eradicate European influence entirely. It really makes you think, how quickly can a major political and religious alignment just be dissolved?
In this case, it seems almost instantaneous.
Pretty much. Fasilides immediately reinstated the Ethiopian Orthodox Church as the sole official state religion. End of story there.
And the Europeans, the Jesuits...
Ordered out. All Jesuit missionaries, any other Europeans, expelled, sent into exile. Many ended up having a pretty brutal journey to places like Goa in India.
He confiscated their property, too.
They confiscated Jesuit property, yes. And then, maybe the most symbolic act, in 1665, he ordered the burning of the Books of the Franks.
Meaning Catholic religious writings?
Any remaining Catholic texts, yeah. A definitive public rejection of everything his father had tried to implement with European help.
So Fasilides didn't just hit undo. He actively built walls.
Exactly. He created a lasting legacy of, well, isolation from Europe. He completely ended diplomatic relations.
And what's really critical here, he even formed alliances with neighboring Muslim states' traditional rivals.
Specifically to create a buffer, to ensure no future European or Catholic incursions could happen again.
And that isolation policy, it basically stuck.
It effectively lasted for nearly 2 centuries, shutting Ethiopia off almost completely from European contact and influence until the mid-19th century.
Wow. Okay, so let's try to synthesize this. What's the big takeaway?
Well, I think the story of Susenyos is just this powerful cautionary tale. It shows that military necessity, that desperate desire for European technology and aid, could temporarily overcome political stability.
But only up to a point.
Only until the absolute cultural roots of the empire were attacked. The Jesuit mission ultimately failed, not really because of a theological debate, but because of an inability, especially by Mendes, to distinguish between theological conversion and outright cultural destruction.
They pushed too hard, too fast on the wrong things.
They completely misread the cultural landscape.
So we see this clear divergence in vision at the end. Susenyos desperately wanting European modernity alliance technology to secure his empire,
Even at immense cultural cost.
while his son, Fasilides, prioritized cultural and political sovereignty above all else, choosing isolation as the price.
A radical shift back. So for you, the listener, here's something to think about, a final provocative thought. Was Fasilides' policy, almost 2 centuries of isolation, was it a defensive necessity? Did it protect Ethiopian identity, ensure national survival against foreign interference? Or did it ultimately delay the very modernization and consolidation that his father, Susenyos, had so desperately, if perhaps misguidedly, sought through that European alliance? It's that fundamental tension, the cost of sovereignty versus the potential cost of progress, or perceived progress, something to mull over until our next deep dive.